The Reese Senior Bowl and the East-West Shrine Bowl are both this week, meaning a couple of Utes have an opportunity to raise their draft stock, and Britton Covey is Super Bowl bound. All that and more on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, I want to thank all of you who helped us reach 900 subscribers on YouTube. Your guys' support means the world to us here at Locked On Utes, so we can't thank you guys enough for that. Would love to interact with you guys on the YouTube comments as well as on social media. You can follow me at JT Wistrcill, or you can follow the show at Locked On Utes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Network. Make every moment matter more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. On today's show, joining me is Dante Guardi of UteZone. And Dante, this is a fun time of the year for the Utes because they get an opportunity to get a couple of their guys on the NFL stage. And how do you do that? Step one after declaring is stand out amongst the best guys who are also draft eligible. And these guys have an opportunity to do that this week in the East-West Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl. I think it's a great opportunity. There's two Utes in each one. For the Senior Bowl, it's Dalton Kincaid and Braeden Daniels. Then for the Shrine Bowl, Tavion Thomas and Mohamoud Diabate. Great opportunities for both these guys. And I think these bowl games are such great things that give these guys chances to spotlight their talents amongst a lot of other talented college players.
Yeah, the two in the Senior Bowl are Dalton Kincaid and Braeden Daniels, and both of those players obviously were tremendous at Utah. Braeden Daniels holding it down, really doing a great job blocking and keeping Cam Rising safe, blocking his blind side, which is obviously a huge thing at the college level. And then obviously we all know what Dalton Kincaid did. That game against USC was monumental, instrumental to what Utah accomplished this season, because without that win, Utah wouldn't have found themselves in the Pac-12 championship game. And obviously there were some more moments throughout the regular season that really stuck out with Dalton. And even going back to last season, or well, 2 years ago now, technically, I mean, he scored in the Rose Bowl, that game time touchdown, obviously scored in the Pac-12 championship game. I mean, he made a plethora of just tremendous plays over the course of his career. So these two have definitely earned their stripes, and the Senior Bowl is a great place to display your abilities and really work your way up those draft boards. We mentioned it before the show. We were just talking about some guys who have done that before. We saw defensive end Boye Mafe out of Minnesota really dominate Senior Bowl practicing, see his name shoot up draft boards. We also saw Javon Kinlaw, who played yesterday on the 49ers. He was another one of those players coming out of South Carolina, just a freak athlete who I guess didn't really get a chance to show what he was all about during the regular season. Goes Senior Bowl, dominates, and sees his name shoot up draft boards. So it'll be interesting to see if Braeden Daniels or Dalton Kincaid were to have that sort of response to their Senior Bowl performances. I don't really think so, honestly, because both of them were both extremely good in the regular season. I think everyone kind of knows their game. There's not much to really improve on because they were both just so dominant. I don't think Braeden Daniels allowed a sack, and if he did, it came in the very last game in the Rose Bowl. He was extremely locked down at left tackle. And then obviously, I mean, every time you turned on Utah football, if there was a big game on, Dalton Kincaid was out there making plays. So I'm pretty sure neither of those two guys are under the radar really, but they could definitely see their draft stock improve. We've seen Dalton being mocked in the first round right now.
Yeah.
I don't believe he'll be in that top, anywhere in the top 15, but I totally could see him getting drafted in that 21, 27, 15,
Absolutely.
21 range, because I mean, that's where he's being mocked. And, with a good performance at the Senior Bowl throughout practice and during the game itself, he could really see that number shoot up, because, I mean, I think he is still kind of an underrated athlete. The stuff that he does, how fluid he is when he goes up and tries to catch a contested pass or just making a guy miss an open field. He is a tremendous athlete, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that. So if there's an area of his game where I could see people kind of buying in on because of the Senior Bowl, it would be there. And then with Braeden Daniels, his NFL status is kind of up in the air just because he's done so many different things at Utah. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's more of a good thing, because we've seen him play guard, we've seen him play tackle, we've seen him do a lot of different things at Utah and do all those things at a very high level. So I think this for the Senior Bowl is going to be kind of where NFL teams can kind of see where they think Braeden Daniels would fit in their roster, rather than do we want to draft this kid or just do we see him as more of a guard or a tackle? And that's going to kind of make or break some things. Maybe if he's a third round draft pick, a second round draft pick, maybe even a fourth round draft pick, things of that sort. But with Braeden Daniels, I mean, his footwork is fantastic. His arms, as soon as he locks onto somebody, they're pretty much not getting out of there, even though he's a little bit undersized, a little bit slimmer, but still really great feet, really good body control. And overall, he just did a tremendous job on that Utah offensive line as both a run blocker, and we saw him get really good as a pass blocker towards the end of his career as well. So a really great all-around offensive lineman who can do a lot of different things on a lot of different parts of your offensive line.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the Senior Bowl, look, this is the cream of the crop. If you get invited to the Senior Bowl, this is the one we see the guys if they decide to turn down, right? If they're going to go pro, to get the East-West Shrine Bowl is still a great opportunity for these guys, but it is a step down from the Senior Bowl. So starting with the Senior Bowl, I think you make a lot of great points. First, Dalton, what's at stake for him in this? I think he does have an opportunity to make himself a first-round pick. I think if you go out all week long, and the thing that's most important with the Senior Bowl, I think a lot of people, the Reese's Senior Bowl game is, I believe, this Saturday. The game actually isn't the most important thing. Where you want to stand out are in the practices. A lot of the scouts actually go home before the game because if you're a good enough player, we talked about a bunch of those guys, they will literally stay like, oh, you don't need to practice anymore this week. Like we think you're really good and you'll have probably going to be a first round pick. Like that has happened before at the Senior Bowl. That's what Dalton will have a chance to do, is to go out there, shine in those one-on-one opportunities on the outside, see if he can create that separation against top defense to still continue to do his thing overall. It was a bummer that he wasn't healthy to go against Penn State, but look, this is a guy, we saw what he did against USC, all the other games. I think people know what he's capable of, but still helps to do it against the other guys who you're going to be seeing in the NFL and you're vying for that draft position for. So I really think if Dalton has a strong week, to me, he'll have a chance to be a first round pick, as you were talking about. As Daniel Jeremiah, I believe, had him mocked to the Chargers in the 20s. Yeah. And even if Dalton doesn't test outstandingly at the combine, I think anyone who would knock Dalton for that, and I expect Dalton to test well, honestly. I don't think he's going to be like some unbelievable runner in the 40 or anything like that, but guy gets open and guys make plays. One guy I remember who fell because he didn't test so well in the combine was Orlando Brown. He is now the left tackle for a team in the Super Bowl, so I'd say he's a pretty good football player. So that's where I think sometimes these GMs and things get caught up and lost in the numbers. It's important to remember the player themselves. So like I said, for Dalton, I think it's a great opportunity for him to continue to shine and do some things in those one-on-one opportunities, lining up in the slot, maybe get some looks against some corners too, see if he can create separation, get open. That's an opportunity for him to get himself in the first round. Now, looking at Braeden Daniels, I think for me, Braeden is a guard at the NFL. I just think when you look at, you mentioned the size a little bit thing, and he's the struggles against Penn State a little bit. I don't know how he'd hold up against guys like Von Miller on a consistent basis. Now, with the way the NFL is changing, you're going to get matched up with some of those guys if you're an interior offensive lineman, but I think he's going to be a really good guard in the NFL. And I think he's the guy who has an opportunity to cement himself as a day 2 pick at the Senior Bowl. I think if he was to struggle at the Senior Bowl, that's when he could tumble and be a day 3 guy. But I think if he has a really strong Senior Bowl week, looks really good in one-on-ones, offensive and defensive linemen one-on-ones is one of the most important things at the Senior Bowl. When you get those high offensive linemen go against the top defensive linemen too, those are things NFL scouts put a lot of stock in. So I think it's a great opportunity for him to get back at guard because he's been a tackle for the past 2 years. So settle in at that guard spot and gets reps there against some of the toughest defensive tackles. And I think if he shines and does his thing, because he can pass protect because you did so as an outside tackle, so kicking into guard, that's not going to be an issue. And we know he's strong enough as a run blocker too, to your point, Dante, as you were talking about, to get it done. So I think it's a great opportunity for both these guys to really evaluate their stock.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any way to disagree with what you're saying. Completely agree. I do think though that I think there's a lot more room for Dalton to make up. I think he could see himself go up like crazy, but I also think that there's a lot more to lose for Braeden Daniels, just because when you get into that kind of day 2, day 3 mix, it just becomes just a big jumble. And it's guys that are seventh round picks for another team could have been a 4th round pick. When you get into that range, it's just all comes down to fit and teams taking a chance. When you're talking about the first round, it's these are the spectacular athletes who are going to be on an NFL team no matter where they go. These guys are just absolute studs. They will find a home on an NFL roster, whereas the end of day 2, started day 3, it's more just a jumble and who fits well, who can we kind of plug and play here and kind of work with, who fits our system the best. And if Braeden Daniels isn't able to have the best Senior Bowl practice week, best Senior Bowl game, all those sorts of things, and he could find himself slipping a little bit, but I also do think that he could find himself moving up a little bit. Right now, I think I'd probably evaluate him as a third round draft pick, probably Dalton Moore of a high second round, maybe low first round sort of thing. But like I said, both those guys can change. You never know what you can see, because this is where it really stands out. Obviously within a game, within film, within the all 22 that you see during the regular season, it gives you a great sample size. But now with the Senior Bowl, like all eyes are on you. And when
Yeah.
you're going through those one-on-ones against another elite player who is being mocked in a similar situation as you, it gives you a very good chance to kind of break loose and really make a great impression on a lot of NFL GMs, which I think that we'll be able to see with these two because they are both very
Mhm.
underrated athletes. I do think that with both of them, their athleticism is kind of one of those things that is 100% there, but doesn't really get talked about a whole lot. Maybe more so with Braeden Daniels, just because he's a little bit slimmer as an offensive lineman. It's more noticeable when he's able to move around really well at left tackle and at guard and all the other positions that he's played. But then with Dalton, it's like you look at that USC game, like he made so many guys miss
Mhm.
tackles. It was wild. And then you look at that, he made 2 catches. He made the one on the sideline. He made the one
Yep.
over the middle where he just showed his bunnies. And it was like you could tell that the guy had a basketball background. So I mean, these are both two very good athletes, two guys that I think can definitely see their stocks raise after the Senior Bowl kind of wraps up. And those one-on-ones are really going to be the big thing for them this week because that's where you can really gain the most separation on your competition because everyone knows. I mean, the NFL, it's basically the survival of the fittest, right?
Yep.
And you're not gonna you're not really perfecting your game. You're trying to do things that other guys can't to give
Yeah.
you a chance. It's just every single guy. You're trying to just hop over the next guy until you can make it to the top. And I think the Senior Bowl is a fantastic place to do that for both of these players.
You mentioned too how the second and third rounds, kind of the talent can get all mumbled. And one of the things that helps some of those guys rise to the top is if you buy their work ethic and the presence they're going to be in the locker room. And I think when some of these guys get in those interview rooms, which there's a lot of interviews during the Senior Bowl week, talk with guys, get to know them better. There's going to be a number of people who start to have draft crushes on Dalton Kincaid, on Braeden Daniels, because they're just guys who do whatever it takes to help their teams win, get it done. They're going to be a lot of people that are going to be biting at the chance or pounding the table in those draft rooms saying, hey, we need to get this guy. This is one of our guys we want in this program. So a great opportunity for both those guys to evaluate their stock. And if you guys want, you can actually watch the Senior Bowl all week long. Basically, it's on NFL Network. I believe they televise the practices. So if you guys are curious to see how Braeden, how Dalton are checking out, make sure you guys head over and look into those Senior Bowl practices. Also, Locked On has you covered at the Senior Bowl. Locked On is heading to the Senior Bowl. Get inside analysis from hosts that cover the NFL's next generation from college to on their way to the NFL. Find out which NFL draft boards these players will be climbing all in one location. Subscribe to Locked On NFL for nightly live shows from the Senior Bowl on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So 7 o'clock Utah time. Also want to talk to you guys about our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. With FanDuel Sportsbook, you guys have a great opportunity as they are now the official sports betting partner of the NFL to cash in on a great offer because with FanDuel Sports, you can download FanDuel. They're easy to bet, and you can now bet play their Super Bowl 57 with a no sweat first bet, and you'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to the point spread to who will score a touchdown. The Super Bowl matchup is set, Chiefs versus Eagles. So make sure you guys head over to FanDuel Sportsbook. Their app is safe and secure and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid in your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/locked on to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Dante, Reese's Senior Bowl isn't the only kind of Senior Bowl evaluation kind of draft thing going on this week because you also have the East-West Shrine Bowl and a couple of Utes going on in that are Tavion Thomas and Mohamoud Diabate. I want to focus on Diabate first because I think he's the guy who has a chance to go from at the moment, I would venture to say he's probably going to go undrafted at this point. I think if he really shines and shows out and teases some of those athletic things, I think then it's an opportunity for him to put himself in the conversation to be potentially a seventh rounder. I think it'd be hard for him to work up to the sixth just because he is kind of a tweener a little bit to me of like, he's not an inside linebacker. I think he's better as an outside guy, but he still needs to put on some strength and some muscle to be able to hang with some of those offensive linemen in the running game and not just be a pass rush specialist, which I feel like right now is what you look at him as. But this is an opportunity too. We know he's been working out, gaining weight, has an opportunity to show some things to these teams. So it'll be interesting to see what position he wants to play at in the NFL, where teams see him at in the NFL. I see him as an outside linebacker and think it's a nice opportunity for him to be able to do the same thing, get in those interviews, show out on the practice field all week. The East-West Shrine Bowl actually put a little more stock into the game because it's not as well attended as the Senior Bowl. So I think it's easier for a lot of these scouts just to flip on their TV and check in on the game and see how guys are doing. So I think that's where this could be a big boost in stock for guys like Diabate Thomas too. But I'm really feeling like Diabate will have himself, if he doesn't make himself a chance to get drafted, be a high priority NFL free agent, kind of like what we saw with Nephi Sewell last year.
Yeah, with guys on the front seven, I feel like those are the types of players that see themselves like just exploding during these types of processes because a lot of the stats that don't really get recognized, or well, not that they don't get recognized, that you don't really like realize it during the games is like pressures, for example. Like,
Yep, we talked
I
about this
mean,
yesterday with
Mika
Brian.
Tafua had like 88 pressures in 2021,
Yep.
goes undrafted. That was a little bit shocking to me, but I do
Yeah.
believe that Mohamoud Diabate is faster, more twitchy than
Yep,
Mika Tafua is. And while
definitely.
the pressures aren't there, like the win rate is there, things like that, like the
He
little
didn't get the
things
same opportunities
that
either.
exactly, yeah, like the little things were completely there for Mohamoud Diabate, and he really put that on display towards the end of the season. And I think that he's a player that could totally see his draft stock rise, especially at that maybe defensive end, outside linebacker kind of mix and match position. But I mean, he is a tremendous athlete. Like the guy can run, the guy can spin. He has a plethora of pass rushing moves, and his just sideline to sideline speed is very good as well. So I mean, I do think that he's one of those players that we're going to see a lot of tweets about over the course of the Shrine Bowl practice,
Yep.
over the game, those types of things. I think that he's going to be a player that we see his name rise a pretty fair share, honestly. I think
Mhm.
he's one of those players, how I was mentioning earlier, how like that day 3, like rounds 5 to 7 kind of get jumbled up in talent, and it's like just teams taking shots on kids and kind of like saying, oh well, we need maybe a depth piece at defensive end, like why not take a shot on Mamu Diabate, you know, as long as he can gain a little bit of weight, we might have a diamond in the rough in the NFL draft. And I think that he has the profile, the physical profile, the intangibles to become a diamond in the rough later in the draft. So with his speed and overall just physical profile, I wouldn't be shocked to see him get drafted. Right now, I think he's probably leaning more towards undrafted, but
Mhm.
with a really good week here, which I think he completely can,
Yeah.
I think that he has a very good chance to work his way into some mock drafts and draft conversations, etc. But it all comes down to if he wants to buy in, because I do agree with you where to your point where you were talking about what position he's going to play. If you see him more as a linebacker, defensive end, kind of doing a mix of both, I think that's going to be the biggest thing for NFL teams, like seeing where we can fit him in our system, and then maybe then taking a shot on him. Because
Mhm.
if there's just not the right match, it's going to be tough to be on an NFL team, because if you're not going there for the thing that you actually want to do and they're picking you for something else, there's just not the right chemistry there. But I think if there's a team that needs, say, a really fast speed rusher on the edge, might
Mhm.
as well take a shot for him, because if you can get him in the weight room and add, I mean, he's 6'4", 220, something along those lines.
Yeah.
If you can get him up to 245, maybe, I mean, that's a real good NFL defensive, because he's got some bend to him. Like I said, really twitchy athlete, good spin move, good hands. I mean, he checks all the boxes as a pass
Yep.
rusher, just needs to bulk up a little bit. And then in coverage, even as a middle linebacker, like those are kind of things that you just master by being on a team for a certain amount of time, by
Mhm.
doing your due diligence, by studying the playbook, things of that sort.
Yeah,
So I
athleticism is
mean,
the question.
even as that, like even as a middle linebacker, I could see him making a team somewhere. It just depends on him buying in, because all the physical tools are there, all the intangibles are there for him to succeed. And I do really think that he's a player whose name could be going up draft boards as this process continues.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, we know he's athletic enough, so that's where it's interesting to see how it shakes out for him. He's not the only one at the East West Shrine Bowl though for the Utes, and it's kind of an interesting one. It's Tavion Thomas is here. You know, it was a really weird season, weird end of the season. There's a lot of stuff for Tavion. When you're looking at Tavion's numbers overall in the season, you see 687 rushing yards. You're like, that's not bad, 4.8 yards per carry, but that was kind of a little bit deceptive. I felt like the Stanford game really raised that up. I mean,
Yeah.
he had 200-yard games. One of them was the first one, and the other one didn't come around all the way till we get to the Stanford game. Obviously, he had 180 yards there. But in the NFL, there's so many versatile backs, right? And you can get them late in the draft. Isaiah Pacheco for the Chiefs was a 7th-round draft pick, and we saw all the things he was doing for Kansas City in yesterday's game and on the season. And he's a guy who can go out there and catch passes or run the ball well. Tavion is really a two-down back. He had 6 catches on the season for 43 yards, and that was a high in a season during his time in college. There were years he had negative receiving yards. In fact, he had one catch of, I believe, 9 yards, and that was already like that one catch for 9 yards was the most receiving yards he'd had in the season. He's just not much of a pass catching back. So when you factor in that, he wasn't as explosive this season. So how's that going to translate when obviously in the NFL you have to be explosive? And look, we don't know what was going on inside the locker room. We're not there, but there was obviously a lot of stuff there outside, not just the tragedies he dealt with. We don't know about all those things too, but you don't know about all the other stuff going on in there too. It was a really strange situation. I have a hard time believing that Tavion is going to. I don't see him get drafted personally right now. If we're just talking about in general stock, I think it's going to be hard for him to get an undrafted free agent deal too. I think he's just going to have to change and kind of work on a couple things. We'll see in terms of his game as well, and just kind of how he is as a teammate. Now, I'll say that we saw him play a lot on special teams and do some of those other things and come back and really show a willingness and a role. So, how is that all going to play out? I don't know. As I said, I have a hard time seeing Tavion Thomas getting drafted right now, which I don't think I've said on the show, but That's just the way it kind of is. And I think if you look at the way it played out, Utah fans, and you think about how many good college running backs there are, and also when you're trying to build a team, running back is basically the least important position, at least in my opinion, because you look at how dependent they are on the offensive line success. I have a hard time seeing him getting a chance. And I think this is where guys like him, we could talk about this for RJ Huber too. Those are guys who you look at the XFL and all these other USFL, these leagues come in. And that's where I kind of see him more so ending up eventually. But look, I hope he proves me wrong and makes the changes and gets an NFL spot. I just don't see it at this moment.
I can't disagree with you. I mean,
Mhm.
that simply put, you said it best, really. I like how you brought up Isaiah Pacheco though, because he's a player. He didn't even average 4 yards per carry in his senior
Yeah.
year at Rutgers. So I mean, it just goes to show you how much these things can absolutely change the way a player is viewed. Because I mean, like I said, Isaiah Pacheco was averaging 3.9 yards per carry his
Mhm.
last season at Rutgers, which is, I mean, not good. Guys that are averaging that amount of yards per carry are usually not even getting invited to the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, things like that. So to see Isaiah Pacheco do that well, I mean, I think it says more about how bad Rutgers' like offensive line was,
Yeah.
because clearly he wasn't the problem, because he's
No
doing
way.
just
Rutgers is bad.
fine. I know, right? Crazy concept. Who would have thought? But regardless, with Tavion, I mean, just so many things, and it's like I don't think he's athletic enough, even if there
Yeah.
were no character issues, to really get that much consideration. I mean, it's not like the running back class this year is like crazy good. You know, you got Bijan Robinson at the top, and outside of that, it's a little bit hit or miss. But I mean, he just doesn't. I don't think the first step is really there. I mean, it wasn't really
Yep.
there all last season. There were a couple games where it was like, okay, maybe like UCLA that first half, he had a couple of nice runs, and obviously the Stanford game, like you mentioned, he obviously made a pretty good impact on that game as well. But I mean, just the overall athleticism, I don't really think is there. And there's just not really a role on an NFL team to be like a short down back, to be a goal line back, like in primarily that role. I mean, there's some guys here and there that do a few different things, but like those are pretty niche players for their teams. And it's like you think of maybe him transitioning to like a fullback or something like that. I just don't see that happening. You know,
Yeah.
he's not a Kyle Juszczyk. He's not one of those types of players. These are very niche positions that we're talking about, where there's only like 3 to 6 good players in the entire league. And I completely agree with you. Running back is definitely the least valuable position on an NFL roster, unless you're Christian McCaffrey,
Yeah.
Derrick
Saquon,
Henry,
those guys.
people like that, the elite of the elite. But I mean, Tavion Thomas is not one of those players. So
Nope.
the draft process is going to be a little bit tricky for him. He's definitely got to make a good impression on those interviews, because you know when they call Utah and say, how is Tavion Thomas, it definitely wasn't a seamless fit.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how those kind of go about, and overall just the entire process, because I think that you look at the character issues, but there are also some kinks to his game that need to be sorted out, and it's just going to be a
Yep.
really uphill climb for him, and it's going to really battle his character. If he's able to somehow work out a deal and maybe even be drafted, that would be fantastic in my eyes. I'd look at him and say, that's a really, really great, not only player, but like human, you know, being able to battle through all that adversity and come out on the right side. But I do definitely think he'll get a shot at a mini camp, something like that. I
Mhm.
mean, TJ
Might-
Pledger was signed to a mini camp last year. So I do think Tavion can. I mean, they were on the same team, and Tavion was obviously
Yes.
the one that outperformed. TJ was not bad by any means. He was a fine player, made some really good plays. I think he has the record for the longest run in Utah history too. So that's
That's
kind
not.
of
Yeah.
funny. But regardless, he'll get a shot at a mini camp. He'll be an undrafted free agent, I think, but getting drafted is going to be a really big uphill battle. And if he's able to pull it off, that would be fantastic for him, because that would be the only way I could really see him making a roster, where it's like if the team were to actually spend a draft pick on him, then they'd feel the need to kind of keep him around, because I simply just don't think his game is really fit for the NFL. I don't think his vision also, I don't think, is like fully there. I think that there
Mhm.
were times when he could have taken a separate route and kind of just ran in the back of an offensive lineman instead. Or, and like I said, his first step just isn't as
Yep.
explosive as a lot of these other NFL backs. So it'll be interesting to see how the process treats Tavion Thomas. But as of right now, I'm on the same page as you. I think he'll be an undrafted free agent, probably not going to end up getting drafted.
Yeah, it feels like it's trending that way. But either way, it's an exciting week for all these uses. They do have an opportunity to raise their stocks. Also, we want to talk about an opportunity you guys have to raise something in terms of money for you guys and build up some savings with our friends at UCCU. Let UCCU make your family's dream of owning a home come true by making it more affordable. Right now, UCCU is offering a low rate 7 and 10-year ARMs with rate inflation protection. An adjustable rate mortgage, or ARM for short, comes with an initial low rate of 7 to 10 years. After that, it adjusts to a rate that fluctuates based on the market. That advantage of an ARM is that it comes with an initial rate that's lower than a conventional mortgage. And with the lower rate, an ARM gives you more purchase power than a traditional mortgage. In fact, you get up to 10% more house with an adjustable rate mortgage for the same payment as a conventional loan. Plus, an adjustable rate mortgage can make qualifying for a mortgage loan easier for first-time home buyers. To learn more or simply get an arm. So you can simply visit uccu.com and select the arm that works best for you, or stop by any UCCU branch. UCCU, love where you bank. Dante, to close this one out, last week we were talking about how great it was that a season Devin Lloyd had and a great opportunity Britton Covey had playing in the NFC Championship game. And now we can say Britton Covey has a chance to play in the Super Bowl, from returning kickoffs in the Rose Bowl to going down to Arizona now, State Farm Arena Stadium. I honestly just forgot what the State Farm Stadium is called, but that's where the Super Bowl is. And it's a great opportunity for Britton Covey there. It was great seeing him. We're getting an opportunity on a couple of those punts yesterday. They put Devontae Smith back there a few times. Every time, I love Devontae Smith. I mean, Heisman winning wide receiver, but I was like, no, this is Britton's moment. I want Britton returning all of the kicks out here. I'm so happy that he gets his opportunity. You love when great things happen to great people, and Britton Covey is definitely that.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I was watching the game yesterday. I was a little disappointed with the blocking there from the Eagles. You know, there every time they seemed like he was returning a punt, there were two 49er defenders like right in his face. It's like you give him no other option than to fair catch. So it was a little bit disappointing to not see him like make a huge impact, but just awesome to see him out there. Like I still can't fathom the fact that like Britton Covey is fielding punts for the Eagles who are now in the Super Bowl. Like I mean, I turn on my TV, it's like just crazy seeing him out there in those colors in the NFL doing what he's doing. It's fantastic. He's giving the University of Utah a fantastic reputation while he's at it. A class act, nothing short of that. So Britton Covey, just a Utah legend through and through. Obviously, all of the great things he did for the university, at the university, being a part of a plethora of monumental teams, and now being a part of what might be the Super Bowl winning team. You know, I mean, the Eagles, the last time they won the Super Bowl was 5 years ago, would give Philly a heck of an end of the year. You know, Penn State, I don't know how many Philly fans really claim them as their team, but obviously they won the Rose Bowl. The Philadelphia Phillies just made the World Series, and now the Philadelphia Eagles are in the Super Bowl. So really great year for the city of Philadelphia. And Britton Covey's right in the middle of it. You know, he's getting real playing time. He's seen the field. He won his job. He is a real player on this Eagles team. He gets real playing time and is really making his presence felt. You know, he had a really good game in the regular season. I mean, he's out there. Just his teammates haven't really been doing their job. You know, I mean, I would really love to see him have a good return or two, but that doesn't happen unless the players can block. And hats off to Mitch Wishnowsky as well, because all those punts that he had were hanging in the air for 5-6 seconds. So really giving his guys a chance to get down there and make sure Britton Covey couldn't make an impact, because we all know Mitch knows that Covey is one of the best in the game when it comes to returning punts, as they were both teammates at the University of Utah. So really cool to see Britton in the Super Bowl. It's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, you got the Kelsey brothers going at it in that one too. Yeah. So just a lot of great storylines within what should be a tremendous Super Bowl game, and couldn't be more happy for Britton Covey. And it's awesome that he's painting a good picture for the University of Utah while he's doing it.
Hashtag Covey to the house SB, that we need to get that trending, manifesting it into existence. I want him to take one to the so bad, just on the Super Bowl stage, everything like that. Utah Twitter, honestly, NFL Twitter would just go nuts. And then you can hear all the broadcasters bringing out all these Britton Covey things about how long he was in college for and everything like that. It would be outstanding. My other request, this one probably a little bit more. It's just very hard to return. Obviously, kickoffs, punts, anything like that in the Super Bowl, especially Covey hasn't been able to score one yet this season. And part of that is because of the blocking, as you mentioned. They'll do a photo shoot because it's Super Bowl week. I really want Jordan Davis and him to do one where Jordan Davis holds him up like the Lion King. I think that would be absolutely
hilarious. That'd be sweet.
Anything with those two, the size contrast. The Eagles have a really good left tackle. I forget the guy's name now. He's really good.
I don't know which one's the left, which one's the right, but Mulata is
the one. Yes, Mulata on the left. He's the left one. Yeah, because
there's a picture of Mulata next to Covey. They're walking back to the room together, and it was just like, crazy. And then also shout out to Brian Johnson, Eagles quarterbacks coach, obviously Utah legend. Has groomed a lot of great quarterbacks throughout the course of his coaching career. You know, starting with Dak Prescott back at Mississippi State back in 2014 and 15. You know, Dak was not the most highly touted quarterback coming out of high school. Brian Johnson did a really good job developing him. He coached Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts over at Florida that one year that they almost made the playoff of the COVID year. That offense was electric. They had a ton of great players, and Brian Johnson got the best out of Kyle Trask, made sure he was able to deliver the football on time to Kadarius Toney and Kyle Pitts, etc. That was a great offense. So, and then obviously we saw him make the jump to the NFL from there. And we've seen Jalen Hurts turn into just an absolute beast on the football field, probably one of the favorites to win the MVP. He's the favorite to win the Super Bowl MVP, and Brian Johnson, I think, is a big part of that, a driving factor in the development of Jalen Hurts. And obviously he's a Utah legend, so got to give some respect to him as well.
And Alex Whittingham back in the Super Bowl too with the Chiefs. Yeah. So great either way, someone with ties to the Utah football program in one way or another is going to be a Super Bowl champion. And that's for the second consecutive season too. So that's always great to say. It's going to be a fun Super Bowl. You know what else is fun is heading over to UteZone.com. Dante, what kind of stuff do you have cooking up over there?
Utes in the NFL, as per usual. And then as we inch more towards spring ball, just some stuff covering just the team and overall storylines and whatnot. Probably gonna have something up about Tyler Huntley if he's actually able to make the Pro Bowl. Yeah, I think he
Yeah.
is like pretty much locked in. It's all but done. So we'll have someone about that and just the rest of the guys that are still playing right now. And obviously we got transfer portal news and things of that sort coming up. So I'll try my best to cover that as best as possible. But yeah, I appreciate you for having me on, JT, like always.
Always great, Dante. I probably shouldn't say this, but it is driving me nuts. I love Tyler Huntley, but the fact that he's going to get in over Trevor Lawrence just really irks me, is because Trevor Lawrence has been so good this season. I love Tyler Huntley, but by the
Yeah.
time the Pro Bowl voting had closed, he actually hadn't even thrown a touchdown pass yet at his start. So it's one of those things. I love Tyler.
The
I hope
one
he
that
gets an
was weird in my
opportunity.
opinion was Tua. Tua like was first
Well,
in
I
the
thought
entire
Tua was
NFL in
ahead of
fan
him.
votes.
I thought it was the injury. Is Tua not ahead of him?
Oh, maybe okay, that must be what it is because
Yeah.
but that was before. Like he led the entire NFL in fan votes and didn't get in.
Yeah,
Like the
it's
way it
weird
works
however
is it's
however
wild.
it all works. But you know what?
Yeah.
We said earlier, good things happen to good people. I'm very happy for Tyler Huntley if he does get in, because based on what he's been through and how hard he's worked, great opportunity for him. So it's gonna be fun, something fun to watch and check out. Also, something fun to watch and check out because we so appreciate you making this your first listen every single day. For your second listen, we recommend you check out Locked On College Basketball, where experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court. Plus, you can hear from big name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Appreciate Dante as always for joining us. That'll do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes, but see you tomorrow.